George Orwell, born Eric Arthur Blair in 1903, is remembered as one of the most influential writers and thinkers of the 20th century. His work spans novels, essays, journalism, and political critique, yet he remains a figure of enduring mystery. Was he simply a writer, a social critic, or a visionary who foresaw the dangers of totalitarianism? Orwell's genius lay in his ability to blend literature with moral and political insight. He wrote with clarity, precision, and urgency, exposing social injustices, oppression, and the mechanisms of power. His works are not mere stories. They are warnings, reflections, and calls to awareness, challenging readers to confront uncomfortable truths about society and human nature. At the same time, Orwell's life itself embodies the role of observer and participant. He experienced colonial rule in Burma, lived among the poor in London and Paris, and fought in the Spanish Civil War, gathering first-hand knowledge of human suffering, ideological conflict, and systemic oppression. These experiences informed his worldview and gave authenticity to his writing, merging personal insight with universal significance. Ultimately, Orwell was more than a writer. He was a moral conscience, a keen observer of society, and a visionary thinker. His work continues to resonate because it combines literary skill with ethical purpose, reminding us that words can illuminate truth, challenge power, and inspire change. George Orwell was born Eric Arthur Blair on June 25, 1903, in Motihari, Bihar, India, where his father worked in the British Colonial Civil Service. Although his family was part of the British middle class, they were not wealthy, and young Eric's early life was marked by a sense of both privilege and constraint. At the age of 1, Orwell was sent to England, where he grew up primarily in Henley-on-Thames. His childhood was shaped by a mix of strict discipline, exposure to British society's class structures, and the contrasting realities of empire. He attended St. Cyprian's School, a private preparatory school where he first experienced the rigid social hierarchies and inequalities that would later influence his writing. Orwell's family life was marked by sensitivity and intellect. His mother, a cultured and attentive woman, nurtured his early love for reading, while his father's reserved demeanor instilled a sense of duty and observation. These early experiences of displacement, social comparison, and the contrast between privilege and hardship would leave a lasting impression, shaping his moral consciousness and providing material for his later explorations of society, class, and injustice. Even in his youth, Orwell displayed a keen awareness of the world around him, questioning authority, observing human behavior, and developing the clarity of thought and moral seriousness that would define his literary career. After his early schooling, George Orwell won a scholarship to Eton College, one of England's most prestigious schools. At Eton, he was exposed to a rigorous curriculum, including classics, literature, history, and philosophy, which helped shape his analytical mind and command of language. The school environment also highlighted the social hierarchies and inequalities that would later become central themes in his writing. Orwell was a thoughtful and observant student, often reflecting on morality, justice, and the nature of authority. His experiences at Eton reinforced his sense of social awareness and critical thinking, giving him first-hand insight into privilege, competition, and the rigid structures of British society. These observations would later inform his depictions of class and power in works like Down and Out in Paris and London and Animal Farm. Beyond academics, Eton provided Orwell with opportunities to engage in debates, write creatively, and cultivate a lifelong love of literature. His exposure to both classical and contemporary works deepened his appreciation for clarity, precision, and moral purpose in writing. These formative years laid the foundation for his intellectual rigor, ethical consciousness, and distinctive literary voice, preparing him to become not just a novelist, but a keen social critic and moral observer of his time. After finishing his education at Eton, George Orwell joined the Indian Imperial Police in Burma in 1922, following a path typical for young men of his social background. However, his time in Burma exposed him to the harsh realities of colonial rule, the abuses of power, and the human cost of empire, profoundly shaping his moral and political outlook. Orwell witnessed firsthand the exploitation and oppression inherent in British colonial administration. He interacted with both local Burmese citizens and British officials, observing the inequalities, corruption, and moral compromises that came with authority. These experiences awakened in him a deep sense of empathy for the oppressed and a critical perspective on power and injustice. His moral awakening in Burma marked a turning point in his life. Disillusioned by the cruelty he observed, Orwell began to question authority, imperialism, and societal hierarchies, setting the stage for his lifelong commitment to social critique. The ethical concerns and awareness of human suffering he developed during these years would later permeate his novels, essays, and journalistic work, giving them both authenticity and moral urgency. Ultimately, Orwell's service in Burma was both formative and transformative, instilling in him the moral conscience and critical eye that would define his career as a writer, thinker, and observer of society. After leaving Burma, George Orwell chose an unconventional path. He immersed himself in poverty to understand life from the perspective of the marginalized. In the late 1920s, he lived in the slums of London and Paris, working menial jobs, experiencing homelessness, and confronting the harsh realities of urban deprivation. These years provided Orwell with first-hand insight into social inequality, class struggle, and human resilience. He interacted with the poor, the unemployed, and the destitute, observing how poverty shaped behavior, morality, and society. The experience was both physically and emotionally grueling, yet it gave him authentic material for his writing and strengthened his empathy for the oppressed. This period inspired his first major work, Down and Out in Paris and London, a vivid account of life on society's margins. Through his prose, Orwell combined literary skill with social observation, highlighting injustice, human dignity, and the systemic causes of poverty. His experiences in these cities shaped his belief that writing should illuminate truth and advocate for moral awareness, a principle that would guide his career. Ultimately, living among the poor was a defining chapter in Orwell's life, reinforcing his commitment to honesty, social justice, and the moral purpose of literature, and laying the groundwork for the political and ethical concerns that permeate his later works. Building on his experiences in Burma and the slums of Europe, George Orwell began his career as a writer committed to truth and social observation. His early literary works include journalism, essays, and novels that reflect his political awareness, moral concern, and keen observational skills. Orwell's journalism often tackled social injustice, poverty, and the human condition, blending clear prose with incisive critique. His essays, including those published in magazines and periodicals, reveal his commitment to honesty, clarity, and engagement with contemporary issues, tackling topics ranging from imperialism to education and class dynamics. In fiction, Orwell explored themes of alienation, injustice, and ethical dilemmas. Novels such as Burmese Days draw directly on his experiences in colonial Burma, offering a critical portrayal of imperialism and its human cost. Other works, including A Clergyman's Daughter and Keep the Aspidistra Flying, examine poverty, societal pressures, and the struggle for personal integrity. Through his early literary output, Orwell honed a style marked by precision, lucidity, and moral purpose. These works established his reputation as a writer who combined narrative skill with ethical engagement, laying the foundation for the influential political allegories and dystopian novels that would define his later career. Published in 1933, Down and Out in Paris and London is George Orwell's first full-length work, blending memoir, reportage, and social critique. Drawing directly from his years living among the poor, the book offers a raw, unflinching account of poverty, hunger, and social inequality in two major European cities. Orwell details life in the slums of Paris, working in low-paying kitchens and observing the struggles of the urban poor, and then contrasts it with the harsh realities of destitution in London, including homelessness and menial labor. His writing captures the daily indignities, physical hardships, and moral dilemmas faced by those living on society's margins. Beyond documenting suffering, the book reflects Orwell's empathy and social conscience. He humanizes the poor, portraying their resilience, dignity, and ingenuity, while also critiquing systemic injustices that perpetuate inequality. The work demonstrates his belief that literature should illuminate truth and advocate for social awareness, rather than simply entertain. Down and Out in Paris and London set the tone for Orwell's career, a combination of personal experience, keen observation, and moral engagement. It remains a seminal work in both literary and social history, showcasing Orwell's commitment to bearing witness to human suffering and the structures that enable it. George Orwell's political consciousness developed through personal experience, observation, and critical reflection. Having witnessed the inequities of British colonial rule in Burma and the suffering of the poor in Europe, Orwell became deeply concerned with issues of social justice, power, and morality. He identified strongly with democratic socialism, advocating for a society that prioritized equality, fairness, and human dignity. Orwell was critical of both unchecked capitalism, which he saw perpetuating poverty and exploitation, and totalitarian regimes, which he viewed as oppressive and dehumanizing. His writing consistently reflected a concern with the abuse of power and the need for ethical governance. Orwell's awareness of imperialism was especially acute. His first-hand experience in Burma exposed him to the moral compromises and systemic injustices inherent in empire, shaping his critical perspective and later fueling novels like Burmese Days and essays on colonialism. Throughout his career, Orwell's ideological commitments were tempered by pragmatism, moral reflection, and insistence on truth. He rejected blind allegiance to ideology, instead emphasizing critical thinking, integrity, and accountability, which became central themes in his journalism, essays, and fiction. His political awareness made him not just a writer, but a chronicler of injustice and a moral observer of society. In 1936, George Orwell traveled to Spain to join the fight against fascism during the Spanish Civil War, enlisting with the POUM militia, a socialist anti-fascist group. His experiences on the front lines profoundly shaped his political thinking and reinforced his commitment to truth, justice, and moral responsibility. Orwell witnessed the brutal realities of war, including the hardships faced by soldiers, the chaos of the battlefield, and the internal divisions among anti-fascist factions. He became acutely aware of the dangers of propaganda, ideological manipulation, and political betrayal, lessons that would later influence his famous works on totalitarianism and 1984. These experiences were chronicled in his memoir, Homage to Catalonia, which provides an unflinching account of the war from the perspective of a participant. Orwell combines vivid storytelling with critical analysis, highlighting both the courage of ordinary people and the moral complexities of political struggle. The Spanish Civil War solidified Orwell's belief in the importance of personal integrity and ethical clarity in the face of oppressive ideologies. It also deepened his skepticism toward authoritarianism, whether on the left or right, preparing him to write timeless critiques of totalitarian power, surveillance, and societal control in works like Animal Farm and 1984.
Published in 1945, Animal Farm is George Orwell's allegorical novella that critiques the corruption of revolutionary ideals and the rise of totalitarianism. Using a farm and its animal inhabitants as symbols, Orwell exposes how power can corrupt, manipulate, and oppress, even when initially pursued for noble purposes. The story depicts the rebellion of farm animals against their human owner, only to see the new leadership, led by pigs like Napoleon, become equally oppressive. Through satire and allegory, Orwell illustrates the mechanisms of propaganda, betrayal, and the distortion of truth, highlighting the ease with which revolutionary ideals can be subverted. Animal Farm reflects Orwell's keen political insight, drawing directly on his experiences with socialism, imperialism, and the ideological conflicts of his time, including lessons from the Spanish Civil War. His prose is clear, precise, and deceptively simple, making complex political concepts accessible while retaining moral and philosophical depth. Beyond its immediate political critique, the novella serves as a timeless warning about the dangers of concentrated power, blind loyalty, and the manipulation of information. Animal Farm cements Orwell's reputation as a writer who combines literary skill with ethical vision, creating works that entertain, enlighten, and provoke reflection on society and human nature.
Published in 1949, 1984 is George Orwell's seminal dystopian novel, offering a chilling vision of a world dominated by totalitarianism, surveillance, and ideological control. Set in the fictional superstate of Oceania, the story follows Winston Smith as he struggles against the oppressive regime of Big Brother and the Party, which manipulate truth, history, and individual thought. The novel explores themes of power, freedom, and the fragility of human conscience. Through devices such as Newspeak, thought crime, and constant surveillance, Orwell demonstrates how authoritarian regimes can reshape reality and dominate minds, eroding individuality and moral judgment. The oppressive society depicted serves as both a warning and a prophecy, highlighting the dangers of unchecked power and ideological manipulation. 1984 reflects Orwell's lifelong commitment to clarity, moral responsibility, and political critique. Drawing on his experiences with imperialism, poverty, and the Spanish Civil War, he created a narrative that is both entertaining and profoundly instructive, blending fiction with philosophical and political insight. Even decades after its publication, 1984 remains a powerful cautionary tale, illustrating the enduring relevance of Orwell's warnings about surveillance, propaganda, and the need for vigilance in protecting freedom and truth. A central focus of George Orwell's work is the exploration of power
and its capacity to oppress. Across novels like Animal Farm and 1984, Orwell examines how authority can manipulate, control, and dehumanize individuals, showing the moral and social consequences of unchecked power. In 1984, the regime of Big Brother demonstrates extreme forms of surveillance, using constant monitoring, censorship, and psychological manipulation to control thought and behavior. The concept of Newspeak illustrates how language itself can be weaponized to limit thought, showing that control over information equates to control over reality. Orwell's writing also emphasizes the importance of truth and integrity. He portrays societies where facts are distorted, history rewritten, and moral clarity obscured, highlighting the fragility of individual conscience under authoritarian pressure. By exploring these dynamics, Orwell warns of the danger of complacency and the societal consequences of power left unchecked. Through his work, Orwell demonstrates that oppression is not only physical, but also psychological and ideological. His insights into surveillance, control, and the manipulation of truth remain deeply relevant, offering a timeless critique of power and a call to defend freedom and reason in any society.
George Orwell understood that language is not merely a tool for communication, but a weapon in the struggle for power. This idea is central to his dystopian vision in 1984, where the party uses Newspeak, a deliberately restricted and manipulated language to limit thought, control perception, and eliminate dissent. Through Newspeak, Orwell illustrates how political authority can shape reality itself. By constraining vocabulary, redefining words, and erasing concepts, the regime seeks to make rebellion not only punishable, but literally unthinkable. The novel demonstrates that language shapes thought, and the control of language is a key method of controlling minds. Orwell's concern with language extends beyond fiction. In his essays, he warned against vague, misleading, or euphemistic language used by politicians, journalists, and institutions to obscure truth and manipulate public opinion. He argued that clarity, precision, and honesty in language are essential for freedom, accountability, and ethical society. Ultimately, Orwell's exploration of language and politics underscores a timeless truth. Words carry power, and safeguarding the integrity of language is vital to protecting thought, truth, and human liberty.
George Orwell's essays reveal his keen intellect, moral seriousness, and commitment to truth. Across topics ranging from politics and social justice to literature and culture, his writing is characterized by clarity, precision, and a direct style that makes complex ideas accessible without sacrificing depth. Orwell combined analytical rigor with wit, often exposing hypocrisy, injustice, or absurdity with subtle irony and sharp observation. Essays such as Shooting an Elephant and Politics and the English Language illustrate his ability to blend personal experience with broader social critique, making readers both reflect and empathize. Central to Orwell's essays is moral purpose. He believed that writing should not be divorced from ethics. It should illuminate truth, challenge oppression, and encourage critical thinking. He often addressed the abuses of power, imperialism, and social inequality, urging readers to confront uncomfortable realities rather than ignore them. Through his essays, Orwell established himself as more than a novelist. He became a public conscience and intellectual guide, demonstrating that literature can be both elegant and socially engaged. His work remains a model for writers seeking to marry style, clarity, and ethical responsibility in their own writing. George Orwell's career as a journalist reflected his dedication to truth, clarity, and social justice. From reporting on the hardships of the poor in London and Paris to covering the Spanish Civil War, Orwell consistently sought to bear witness to reality and expose injustice. His journalism combined first-hand observation with critical analysis, offering readers vivid accounts of political, social, and economic conditions. In Spain, for example, his reports on the internal conflicts among anti-fascist factions revealed the complexities and moral ambiguities of war, challenging simplified narratives and propaganda. Orwell's commitment to truth also extended to his criticism of language manipulation. He argued that sloppy or deceptive language in media and politics could obscure reality and mislead the public. By writing with precision, honesty, and ethical awareness, Orwell modeled a form of journalism that values both clarity and conscience. Through his reporting and essays, Orwell demonstrated that journalism can be a moral act, exposing oppression, questioning authority, and giving voice to those often silenced. His work remains a benchmark for writers and reporters seeking to combine literary skill with integrity and social responsibility. George Orwell's experiences in British Burma and his deep engagement with global politics shaped his lifelong critique of imperialism. He witnessed firsthand the harsh realities of colonial rule, including exploitation, racial hierarchy, and the moral compromises demanded of those enforcing authority. Orwell's novels and essays such as Burmese Days and Shooting an Elephant illustrate the ethical tensions of empire. He portrays both the oppressors and the oppressed with nuance, highlighting the corrupting influence of power and the human cost of domination. These works reveal how imperial authority not only harms the colonized, but also morally and psychologically burdens those who enforce it. Beyond his personal experiences, Orwell analyzed imperialism as a systemic injustice, critiquing the ideological justifications used to legitimate domination. He emphasized that ethical governance and respect for human dignity are essential regardless of political or cultural context. Orwell's critique of imperialism is integral to his broader worldview, a commitment to truth, moral clarity, and social justice. By exposing the human consequences of empire, he underscores the dangers of unchecked authority and the importance of empathy, ethics, and critical reflection in any society. George Orwell's contributions to literature extend far beyond his political commentary. He has had a profound and lasting impact on modern writing. His works demonstrate that literature can combine narrative skill, moral purpose, and social critique, influencing generations of novelists, essayists, and journalists. Orwell's clear, unadorned prose set a new standard for writing, emphasizing precision, accessibility, and honesty. His insistence on clarity and truth in language has inspired writers to avoid unnecessary complexity and to communicate ideas with both elegance and integrity. His novels, particularly Animal Farm and 1984, introduced political allegory and dystopian fiction as powerful literary forms. These works not only shaped the genre of political fiction, but also influenced broader literature by demonstrating how storytelling can illuminate ethical dilemmas, societal structures, and human psychology. Orwell's essays in journalism further solidified his influence, showing that nonfiction could be intellectually rigorous, morally engaged, and stylistically compelling. Today, his legacy is evident in writers who strive to combine literary artistry with social consciousness, proving that literature can entertain, enlighten, and provoke critical thought simultaneously.
George Orwell's personal life was marked by both intellectual vigor and physical fragility. Throughout his adult years, he faced chronic health problems, including a lifelong battle with tuberculosis, which ultimately contributed to his early death in 1950. Despite these challenges, Orwell remained remarkably dedicated to his writing and social engagement. Orwell's personal relationships also shaped his life and work. He married Eileen O'Shaughnessy in 1936, and their partnership provided stability and support during periods of intense professional and personal challenge. The death of Eileen in 1945 was a profound loss, but Orwell continued to write and publish, demonstrating resilience in the face of grief and adversity. His experiences with poverty, illness, and personal hardship reinforced his empathy, moral seriousness, and commitment to social justice. These struggles informed his writing, giving it authenticity and depth, whether portraying the hardships of the poor, the moral ambiguities of war, or the human cost of oppression. Despite illness and adversity, Orwell's determination to observe, report, and critique the world never waned. His personal resilience allowed him to produce a body of work that continues to inspire, educate, and challenge readers, cementing his place as one of the most influential writers of the 20th century.
After George Orwell's death in 1950, his reputation grew steadily, cementing his status as one of the most important writers and social critics of the 20th century. While he was respected during his lifetime, it was posthumously that his work gained wider recognition for its literary brilliance, moral insight, and prophetic vision. Orwell's novels, especially Animal Farm and 1984, became cultural touchstones, widely read in schools and cited in discussions of politics, ethics, and society. His exploration of totalitarianism, propaganda, and surveillance resonated strongly in the post-war era and continues to be relevant in modern political discourse. Critics and scholars have celebrated Orwell's clarity of prose, moral seriousness, and incisive social commentary, recognizing him not only as a novelist, but also as an essayist, journalist, and public intellectual. His influence extends across literature, journalism, political thought, and even popular culture, inspiring writers, thinkers, and activists worldwide. Orwell's posthumous reputation reflects the enduring power of his work, a combination of literary artistry, ethical commitment, and fearless critique of authority. His insights into human nature and society continue to challenge readers, proving that his observations about power, truth, and justice remain timeless and universally relevant.
George Orwell's work has left an indelible mark on politics, society, and culture, offering enduring lessons that remain relevant in the modern world. Through his novels, essays, and journalism, he illuminated the dangers of totalitarianism, propaganda, and unchecked authority, providing a moral and intellectual framework for understanding contemporary political dynamics. Orwell's insights into surveillance, censorship, and manipulation of truth resonate strongly in an era of digital media, mass communication, and global political upheaval. Concepts like Big Brother and Newspeak have entered the cultural lexicon, serving as warnings against the erosion of freedom, critical thought, and transparency. Beyond politics, Orwell's work emphasizes the importance of empathy, integrity, and social responsibility. He challenged readers to confront injustice, question authority, and maintain moral clarity, advocating for a society that values both truth and human dignity. Orwell's legacy reminds us that literature can be both a mirror and a guide, reflecting societal flaws while offering insight and caution. His work continues to educate, inspire, and provoke reflection, making him not only a chronicler of his own time, but also a timeless voice for justice, reason, and ethical engagement.
George Orwell's writing is filled with memorable lines that capture his moral clarity, political insight, and literary precision. His words continue to resonate because they challenge authority, illuminate truth, and warn of societal dangers.
From Animal Farm, he famously observed the corrupting nature of power. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This line succinctly critiques hypocrisy, inequality, and the betrayal of ideals. In 1984, Orwell warned about the manipulation of truth and reality. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. This enduring insight highlights the importance of historical memory and critical thinking in the face of propaganda. Orwell also commented on language and honesty, writing in Politics and the English Language, "If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought." This reflects his belief in the power of words to shape perception and morality. Other memorable quotes reflect his empathy and moral seriousness. In a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. Each line embodies his commitment to truth, integrity, and human dignity.